All right. I think we're supposed to start now. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. Welcome to our fourth meeting, and thank you very much for your dedicated time today. We are going to discuss section G and H with our mandate on reviewing them, correcting views, and making proposals. I think we should plan to spend 1 hour and 15 minutes on G and 45 minutes on H. Since G is so much longer, so please kindly note that we are going to try to be efficient as we have been, but we will also focus on seeing if we can work at a pace that works for everyone. Please kindly make every effort to have our proposal in front of us, along with the compilation text, so we can work and move forward together. Now I would like to turn the floor to Nalini for housekeeping and reviewing the agenda. Nalini, you have the floor, please.
Okay, thank you, Terapon. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. Good to see many of you back on this call. I just wanted to first start off to say that this session will be recorded as per usual practice, and the recording will be made available on our SciComm website. Please note that the supplemental submissions that we received are also available on the website under stakeholder inputs. The co-facilitators text was circulated on Tuesday earlier this week, and that can also be found on the website. And if you look under pre-session documents, you will find at the bottom of that list the co-facilitators proposal on sections G and H. So there are two different documents. I'd just like to note that the compilation text from IP3 is, of course, the basis of our discussion, and these have been built on by the co-facilitators in their proposal. So it'll be great if you can actually have all of the documents open. So the compilation text that came out from IP3 and the two documents from the co-facilitators. Today's agenda, as Terapon mentioned, will be to go through sections G and H. In terms of asking for the floor, so there are two ways to do that. One is to raise your hand, and then we will give it in the order of the raised hands. The second option is to put in the chat box your full name and affiliation. And please note in the chat box, and if you want to just test it out now, so that we see it works, if you can just say a quick hello to everyone. If you see two and you scroll down, you'll see an option saying everyone, and let's see if everyone can receive everyone else's messages, and through that chat box, then we'll be able to see anyone asking for the hands if having trouble with the raised hand function. I think that's all in terms of keeping arrangements. Of course, if there is a question, do put it in the chat box, and then we'll try and see how we can address it as we go along. I will now turn to Carissa. Carissa, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening for those of you joining at other times of the day. Thank you for joining us today. As Chair Pond and Nalini mentioned, we are going to do sections G and H today. We are going to start with section G. And Nalini, would you keep an eye on the clock for us? And maybe in a half an hour or so flag for us that we're about a little under halfway through our first session. Thank you so much. So what I'd like to do first, as Nalini mentioned, we are going to look at both our compilation text and our co-facilitator's proposal. In order to put together the co-facilitator's proposal, we looked at our notes from our discussion. I'm going to get the date wrong. I believe on November. No, must have been before then. Anyway, we're going to take our discussion where we had our open discussion on sections G and H, and then we had some supplemental submissions. And of course, we're going to take into account the compilation text. So what I'd like to do first is to look at our co-facilitator's proposal for section G. And I'd like to walk through with you where we are and how we came about the paragraphs that you would now have in front of you in that proposal. So starting on page 1 of the proposal, you'll see paragraph 1, and we have provided in italics and in bold sort of some guidance a little bit on what that paragraph is supposed to cover. So you'll see paragraph 1, it says the goal of the stakeholder reporting. On here, we wanted to give you a sense of what we were looking for and where we have come from. So there seemed to be general agreement that the goal of this section is to assess the progress of the instrument in meeting the vision statement. And I would put an emphasis on the vision statement based on your comments that we had in our open discussion, as well as on the submissions. But importantly, I think we heard from UNEP during that discussion that it's very important for them that the vision is what we are all striving for. So then we talked a little bit about who would be doing all of this reporting, which is of course what this section is all about. And it was highly desirable on everyone's part to ensure that all stakeholders reported on the implementation efforts in accordance with the sort of strategic objectives, the associated targets, and of course taking into account the indicators and the milestones. So paragraph 1 comes underneath it, and we'll come back, of course, and review the content of that. Paragraphs 2 and 3 is sort of the what and the focus of the stakeholder reporting. These were paragraphs actually that were sort of interesting because we did have a number of discussion items about this in our meeting on this, where folks noted that these were really instructions for the Secretariat and for the International Conference. And therefore, maybe we didn't actually need them in this section. Or if they were in this section, we wanted to make sure that they didn't conflict or repeat what we were doing in sections A and C of our earlier work with respect to the Secretariat and the ICCM. So Chair Pond and I looked at your comments and took into account your discussion, and we decided that given that a number of you had provided comments and edits on this section, that what we would give back to you was the ideas that you had incorporated into those paragraphs during your discussions at IP3 and at OEWG 3, and try to figure out how to frame it in the context of the stakeholder reporting. So it wasn't about the duties necessarily of the Secretariat nor the duties of the International Conference, but rather about how the stakeholders related to those efforts. So again, we'll come back and discuss the substance. And so then I'd like to ask you to turn to page 3 of our co-facilitator's proposal, which is paragraph 3 bis. So this is a new paragraph. And what this paragraph is our efforts to put all in one place your suggestions about having a periodic review or a multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral review committee with respect to reporting. So as you looked at the compilation text, you would have noticed that throughout the text, there were references to this periodic review or to a multilateral or multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral review committee. So 3 bis is new. but it takes all of the references to that kind of review and puts it in one place. And you'll see under 3 bis, it goes A through E. And now, as we go through the text, we'll note for you where those pieces came from. The next paragraph is paragraph 4. This was part of the what of the stakeholder reporting. And right now, when we go through this, we'll be talking a little bit about what we've moved to other places. So I'd like to come back to paragraph 4 shortly after we finish this run through. So paragraph 5 is part of the focus of the stakeholder reporting. And paragraph 5 actually had a number of different ideas incorporated into it. So the first part of paragraph 5 talked about data and information and what should happen to that data and information once it's provided to the Secretariat. The second part of the paragraph talked about, sentence 1 talked about having the, creating a panel to help the Secretariat with its work in putting together the report. And then the third part of paragraph 5, now we have created a new 5 bis that would focus on efforts on how to avoid duplication, minimizing burden, and also, but perhaps most importantly, taking account of all of the complementary processes in the sort of chemicals and waste cluster that might be useful or helpful or provide some context to our reporting under SICM, or SICM 2.0. Paragraph 6 through 11 were the details of who does what and how those details sort of fit into the process. So I want to come back to paragraph 6 because it has a lot of different components in it. But I think the most important thing about 6 through 11 is this is where a lot of the details and a lot of the sort of the thinking that was done at OAWG3 and IP3 fit in. And so I want to come back to those. Paragraph 7 and 8 talk in particular about national implementation plans and national actions. We spent quite a bit of time talking about those at our last session. So again, these are sort of perhaps paragraphs that we have already covered. We have found them relevant in section B. And so as we talk about these paragraphs today, we want to talk about where their correct placement might be in the text or whether we've already covered those in the text so far. Paragraphs 9, 10, and 11 go to paragraph 3 bis that we had created to address the periodic review or the multi-stakeholder review committee suggestions. So you'll notice that 9, 10, and 11 we're going to take as a package. We have moved those to 3 bis. And again, I'm going to come back to this section very shortly and talk about how we can sort of move forward in an organized way to make sure that we're all working together on the same paragraphs. Paragraph 12 is, of course, perhaps one of the bigger paragraphs. It talks about how often, what gets measured, a number of your suggestions at OEWG3 and at IP3 in thematic group C related to, how often would this happen? What would the targets be that we would be looking at? Are there key targets? So this was a section that actually Tirpan and I did this part 12A. We didn't actually propose something back to you on this section. We think it needs some discussion. We wanted to make sure we had the range of views. And we also wanted to see if we could put together the format of this section before we decided the details. So we knew what needed to be handled in section, in section G and at paragraph 12. So paragraph 12 had 4 subparagraphs. Subparagraph B is another one that I'm going to come back to you on in just a minute to talk about where it's otherwise been incorporated. Subsection C has several parts. We've made some suggestions with respect to that, and we would like to have some discussion about some of those issues. Subparagraph D is another one I want to come back to in just a minute because we've incorporated much of the content already in paragraph 2. And then paragraph 13 and 14, I'd like to take these together when we get there because we believe that they're intended to cover the overall effectiveness evaluation. There was a number of submissions on paragraph 3 that indicated there is certainly some confusion with respect to what paragraph 13 was intended to cover. However, we can talk a little bit about how I read, or how Tirupon and I read the content of what's there so far. And then I think what we'd like to propose to you is that in paragraphs 13 and 14, the content is the same. And so we'd like to put those together and talk about them together. At the very last page of our co-facilitator's proposal for section G, you will see that we have put 5 bullets. And those bullets are the sort of the big ideas that came out in our open discussion from you and in the supplemental submissions that were submitted. These are big ideas. They are very relevant to this section. They may not be things that we have time to fully develop today. So I do want to call your attention to them and ask you to think about them a little bit. And of course, as we go along, some of them will come out in our discussion. And then Japan, Nalini, can we confirm that Suki and Japan is on the line, are with us today? I'm going to assume so, but Suki, if you're there, would you just put a quick chat in to let us know that you are? I wanted to just note that Japan, in its submission, in its supplemental submission, presented a sort of a different scheme for looking at reporting. And it's a unique in its approach compared to what we've been talking about. So what I'd like to do is sort of get started on some effort to move the text forward. But before we leave section G today, I want to make sure that we give some time to the Florida Japan to have them present their concept, so that as you think about how we might make adjustments to this section, or to propose some ideas for moving forward, that we can have in the back of our mind Japan's proposal, and we may need to come back at a different time and really look through it. So with that, I'd just like to check the chat box for a second. Yes, thank you, Nalini. I see you responding to our colleague who's asking for the text. So as we noted in our introduction, we're going to be working off 2 different pieces of paper. We're going to be working off the compilation text, which of course we've had since the end of IP3. And we're going to be working off our co-facilitators proposals that was circulated to everyone on Tuesday and has been up on the website. So right now, what I'd like to ask you to do is to have in front of you those 2 texts. And we have put together a slideshow, and we're going to try to start out by making some progress on proposing a path forward that incrementally will get us closer to where we can collectively want to be at the end of, or perhaps at the beginning of, ICCM 5. So to that end, we would like to start today with a section G that is perhaps organized in a way that makes it easier for us to have our discussion. So the existing text, as you know, came out of thematic group C. Some of it was perhaps looked more like text that you would see in the form of an agreement, and some of it was more sort of discussion and trying to capture where we were at OEWG 3 and where we were at IP 3. So one of the things that we would like to do is to ask you to give us some flexibility for the first couple of minutes to reach some general agreement on some measures that we can take together to put us in a better place when we end today. So I'd like to return to the paragraphs and the subparagraphs that I noted in my introduction that we would come back to in a minute. I'd like that minute to be now, and ask if we could, everyone could go to the top of page 3 of the co-facilitator's proposal. That's paragraph 3 bis. Mariana, could I ask you to pull up our PowerPoint, please?
Carissa, and just in the meantime, so Suki has confirmed she's online.
Great, thank you so much. And if you'll go to our first slide on paragraph 3 bis. So what I'd like to do here, and just again to clarify, I know that we did move a little bit quickly last time, so I would like to just clarify that we're going to try to be very clear on what we're trying to do. So what we're trying to do first is not to discuss the content of the co-facilitator's proposal yet, but rather to do some housekeeping measures to bring our proposed text a little bit more in line with what we're able to do, so that we're able to have a discussion based on the content of the co-facilitator's proposal. So paragraph 3 bis, as I mentioned in my introduction, takes all of your text suggestions and comments related to the periodic review or the multi-stakeholder review committee. And we have put those all in one paragraph. That paragraph is now in front of you and it is paragraph 3 bis. So I'm not opening a discussion on 3 bis. I just want you to see what's here. And with that, I'd then like to ask the Secretariat to turn to the next slide. And I'd like those of you who have the co-facilitator's proposal ahead of you, I'd like to ask you to go to the bottom of page 5 and onto page 6. And you will see paragraphs 9, 10, and 11 in the co-facilitator's proposals. Those paragraphs are now on the screen. And our proposal is that these paragraphs have now been moved to 3 bis. And so in our proposal going forward, we would move paragraphs 9, 10, and 11 to 3 bis. And then paragraphs 9, 10, and 11 would not be needed in our proposal going forward. So that will help us organize our work. So I'm going to take about 15 seconds and allow you to confirm in your own mind that paragraphs 9, 10, and 11 have been moved to 3 bis. And then I would like to ask you if you see something that we've missed or you have concerns with that, to intervene, but otherwise I'd like to sort of operate by the same rule that we operated last time and that we're using in the budget process, which is if you don't have any concerns or you're fine with the general agreement to do this, that you would not intervene. And so I'm going to hold for about 15 seconds, and Nalini, if you can watch the chat box and the raised hands for us, that would be great.
Okay, so we have Vasilius from the EU asking for the floor.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Oh, great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Co-Chairs. Allow me first to thank you very much for your hard work and preparation of the discussion today. We appreciate very much that you try to capture views from stakeholders, explaining the rationale of your proposal in a transparent way. And we recognize that many of our comments and suggestions as submitted have been taken into account in the papers on table. And we also appreciate the fact that you circulated the proposal before this meeting so that we had some time to look at it and consult it within the EU and the member states. So we understand it is a challenging task to achieve progress in this group, informal group, without entering a negotiation mode. And to this end, we would like to underline that our interventions today are not preempting our position during the upcoming negotiations. But we would be glad to participate in the discussion, providing a feedback on your proposals and questions. Now, what you have raised is indeed the most difficult part for us. 3 bis, we have quite a lot of questions for clarification on this proposal.
Vasilius, may I interrupt you for just 1 second? And I apologize for interrupting you. We are going to go back and discuss the content of 3 bis. I think right now we're just trying to organize the text so that when we do have the discussion on the content, we can do so in a way where we're looking at all of the information that's relevant to that subject at the same time. So I don't want to interrupt you, but I think what we're asking right now is simply just confirmation that we have not on the content or your views on 3 bis, but on the ability to sort of put 3 bis together such that paragraphs 9, 10, and 11 fall into 3 bis, and then we can have that conversation when we get to 3 bis. So I apologize if you were going to end up there, but I want to just make sure that it was clear what we were asking you to do.
No worries. Thank you for the clarification, Carissa. Indeed, I don't want to get into details.
Thank you.
It is a little complicated because the paragraphs 9, 10, and 11 are indeed addressing reporting. Reporting is also addressed in another context under 3 bis. If we're on these paras 9 to 11, yes, we may go with the deletions. We have expressed this in the understanding that this is not completely lost. So reporting is also addressed or was addressed in para 12. And this is where we thought it would be well accommodated. Now, it seems that parts of these deletions are made in the understanding that they will be integrated under 3 bis. I don't want to get into details, but this seems to be a little problematic for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I certainly expect we will have a what's the right word? A significant discussion when we get to 3 bis. And yes, I agree with you. There are parts of 12A that also refer to this, and we will certainly get there. So thank you very much. Do we have any other hands, Nalini?
Not for now. And in the comment box, there's a request to put up para 3 bis on, but I think I've just asked them to just look at the document because we have the slides in varying order. So perhaps we'll get to that soon.
Certainly we could, Mariana, you could go back 1 slide for just a quick second. Thank you. So here you'll see C, D, and E are paragraphs 9, 10, and 11. Okay, so thank you. We appreciate your Basilius, your comments are duly noted and well taken into account. So with that, thank you very much for your assistance. Second, I would like to also ask you to look on your co-facilitator's proposal at paragraph 4, which is on page 4. And Mariana, if I could ask you please to go forward at what I believe now will be 2 slides. So in paragraph 4 of the compilation text, this text now finds its way into paragraph 2 of the co-facilitator's proposal. So what you have on your screen is paragraph 4 from the compilation text. That text has now been integrated into the co-facilitator's proposal in paragraph 2. And we noted that in the co-facilitator's proposal. So you should be able to see that. And so again, I'm going to give you 15 seconds or so. Hopefully you noted that as you were reviewing the co-facilitator's proposal, just to confirm that you agree that that's in there. And therefore, paragraph 4, again, as we start to have our conversations about the larger issues that are in this reporting section G, that paragraph 4 is already there. Again, if you look at paragraph 2 of the co-facilitator's proposal, you will see on making data available, and in paragraph 3, you'll see all of the same content. So again, much like we did for paragraphs 9, 10, and 11, we're simply highlighting for you the paragraphs that have now been moved to other sections such that when we have our conversation about what's in there, we can have a cohesive conversation and address all of the issues. I don't see anything in the chat box. Nalini, do we have any raised hands?
Not that I can see. Maybe we give
Thank you.
another.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate your flexibility. I would now like to go forward one slide, if we may, Mariana, and I would ask those of...
Carissa, sorry, we've got a raised hand from Alexandra.
Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have a question for clarification. So now what we're doing now is like cross-checking if the text is still there that has been moved somewhere else. And what kind of comments do you accept now after each section that we cross-checked?
So right now we're not talking about content. We're simply what we would like to be doing is that when we get to these paragraphs, as they come, we'd like to already have agreed that that the content of these paragraphs now appear in paragraphs 2 and 3, and therefore we will discuss them in the context of paragraph 2 and 3. So we're trying not to have the same concepts and the same language appear in a number of different paragraphs. So as facilitators, we took those together. So when you look in paragraph 2 and you talk about having available data and information that allows for a review of progress, you see in paragraphs 2 and 3 that content is there. When we get to paragraphs 2 and 3.
Yes. Sorry, I understand that. My question is because several times you said we all agreed. So do you take silence for agreement in this process?
Yes, that is how we've been doing it. Correct.
Okay, but for this, I would say if we do it like this, then I think this goes a bit too fast. Because giving us 15 seconds to look it through, and if we do not react immediately, taking it for agreement, I think for a completely revised text, which is very nice that it has been sent prior to our meeting. But anyway, I think usually we sit together in a room for many, many hours and discuss this. And now we have much more difficult circumstances. And I think this needs a little bit more time. So I suggest that silence is not being taken for agreement at this stage.
So I appreciate that. I think we obviously have limited time. And so we are, of course, as we have noted before, we are looking for sort of general agreement. I'm happy to drop a footnote that you requested more time. And that you would like to continue to look at that. I think we do need to move forward. We have been given a very tight mandate. We did our very best to give this to you in advance and to provide you with explanations. So to be perfectly frank, I think we were hopeful that this would be the easiest part of the discussion. And I think if you look, at the top of page 3, you can see very clearly that it talks about the review of progress in achieving the vision, strategic objectives and targets, proposed recommendations, that the information is here. So I'm happy to take a note to talk about that. And we will do our very best to try to ensure that we are providing you with as much guidance as we can. I think to be clear, the silence that we're asking for is simply to avoid people saying, I agree, I agree, I agree. So I don't, when we say silence is agreement, I think what we're asking you is that, we have provided you with a text that tries to couple, is exactly what we would do in a room if we were together, is to move things together that are similar in an effort to do this. So I think that you can look at this not as agreement, in terms of that, but I don't think it should be too difficult to see that we have taken the content of what was in a paragraph and put it into and combined it with similar content that was already in paragraphs 2 and 3.
Yes, it's not too difficult, but anyway, not everybody is a native speaker like you, for instance.
Of course.
So I think people need time, and you can also see that in the chat that there's already.
I do see comments from your group. I do. Thank you.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Thank you. So as we sort of moving forward here, I think what we have when we get to paragraph 4, you will see that we have incorporated that content into paragraphs 2 and 3. And I do hope that, that you did have a chance to look at it in advance. It is the reason that we circulated it in advance, to ensure that we could move forward. So thank you, duly noted, and we're happy to drop a footnote that folks would like to still come back. And if you would like to come back in our next meeting and talk about the reorganization of the compilation, I'm happy to do that. Jill, I see that you'd like the floor. And maybe perhaps.
Jill, it looks like you have 2 sessions going, so I hope I've unmuted the right one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, and I can hear that, but I can't see another session. I'll turn myself off after this and come back again.
Sure, why don't.
What I wanted to say was that, am I right in thinking that all we are doing right now is making sure that a group of words which were in one place in the text basically in text IP 4/2 are now in another place, but we are simply looking that it's the same words. We are not, silence does not mean that we like the words. We are simply accepting that the precise words have moved.
Correct. Thank you. And I appreciate that. And I also would note that we have one of our colleagues in South Africa that is also making that same point on the text. So yes, 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 we will again sort of say all we're trying to do in this first 10 minutes is to bring together in the same parts of the text the similar ideas by moving from one paragraph into another the words. And all we're doing is confirming for you that that's what we have done, so that as we start to walk through the text, we can then talk about the substance and talk about it all together. So we are not jumping back and forth between different paragraphs that address the same issues.
Okay, Carissa, we have then raised hands from Sarah Coombs from Canada and then Samantha Ross from the UK. We also have a comment in the comment box. I don't know if you want me to read it out or you'll just take note of it as we go along.
Sure, I can take note of it as we go along. Thank you.
Okay, fine. So I'm going to unmute Sarah. Sarah, you have the floor.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes, I appreciate, first of all, the co-facilitators' work on this. It's a tremendously difficult job, so thank you very much for this. I just have a question because in section H, after all the changes and the explanations, you provided the text as it reads now. Sort of so we could see paragraph 2 and 3 or whatever it was, 1 and 2 together. And I'm just wondering, in this section, that summary wasn't done, and I think that might be helpful if you could sort of bring those paragraphs as we go through. I understand right now we're just saying that we're moving words, but it might be helpful at the end, or if maybe the secretariat could help to sort of bring up those paragraphs all in a row so the text is all in one place. So it's just a suggestion. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. We can certainly do that going forward. Thank you. I think we have the UK. Is that correct?
Hello?
There we
Hello,
go.
can everyone?
Thank you,
Nalini. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. We'd just like to say that we thank the Secretary and the co-facilitators today for their work on all of these sections and for compiling the input received from stakeholders from the group's previous discussions. We appreciate what a really difficult task this must have been. So as I say, we appreciate the work is looking at the whole section of mechanisms for taking stock of progress in order to avoid duplication. But I think we should acknowledge that this does make the review process for stakeholders more time consuming when referencing wording from other sections and cross-referencing the previous paragraphs. So with this in mind, I would like to echo the previous suggestion that perhaps we should be looking at the text alongside each other. And at this stage, we would only really be able to provide general comments, but would not be able to agree specific changes and decisions at this stage. However, in this instance, with paragraph 4, we are content with that move. And it makes logical sense as well to include the reporting requirements, as was mentioned earlier, all in the same place. So in the spirit of cooperation and support of Canada as well, we would like to make a suggestion that the group provide the co-facilitators the remit to propose the amendments and move the text if needed. Perhaps they can make the amendments and republish the new version of the document at a later stage and provide participants with a week or so maybe to consider the changes at that point. Thank you.
Sure. I think our plan and our summary of our meeting, of course, will be to provide all of that. So thank you for that. Much appreciated. Should we have one more or can we move on?
Okay, so no one's asking for the floor and we don't have
Great.
anyone asking for the, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So then I'd also like to, we have 2 more, both which relate to paragraph 12. So if I could ask you please to turn in your co-facilitators proposals to page 6, and at the very bottom, you will see subparagraph B, and the content of subparagraph B, as noted in the italics, has moved to paragraph 5. So the one thing that I would like to flag for you in paragraph 5 is that there had been references made to the Basel and the Stockholm conventions in that paragraph. We had several comments, including, I think the one that I remember off the top of my head is from Canada, noting that a preference for not including the names of specific conventions. So when this text subparagraph, again, we're talking about subparagraph B of paragraph 12, on the bottom of page 6 in the co-facilitator's proposal, moving that to, would you, sorry, Mariana, would you advance the slide 1 so that everybody can see what we're talking about? Thank you. The for example related to Stockholm and Basel, that there was a request to not include specific references to individual conventions. So when that was moved to paragraph 5, you will note that that reference to Stockholm and Basel, per Jill's point about exact text being moved, the for example text was not moved because of the and Canada was not alone in its references to that. So again, if you look at paragraph 5 on minimizing burden, and you look at slide, perhaps slide 12 would be helpful for people to see. Mariana, could I ask you to take a quick movement to, and that may help people that have asked to see the new text together. If you move to slide 12, you will see the second part of 5 bis. Data and information obtained through complementary reporting processes, such as those in other relevant agreements and initiatives and by IOMC organizations, should be incorporated. Again, we're talking about taking content and moving it together so that we can have a constructive conversation with respect to the issues that are similar.
So we have a raised hand from Alexandra.
Thank you very much. So the way I read 5 bis, it leaves out that data and information from stakeholders should be compiled, analyzed, and reports developed by the Secretariat should be tabled to the international conference. So this is not there anymore. But
yes, so
5 bis, what 5 bis does is it says that there should be synergies. And all the other text that we had in 5 is deleted. So my question again is, when do we discuss this? And
I'm happy to,
because in your last statement you said that nothing has changed, it has just moved.
Yes. So
I'm a bit confused because it has changed and a lot is missing.
Sure.
So can you please clarify what is the procedure?
Yes, if you would please look at the co-facilitator's proposal with respect to paragraph 5, you will see that the first sentence says much of the first part of sentence 1 is now included in paragraph 3, and that the second part of the sentence refers to the creation of the body. So again, what we're talking about here is paragraph 12, subpart B, being incorporated into paragraph 5 in the second sentence. So 5 bis, the second part of the sentence. So we're looking, I'm sorry, I was trying to be responsive to the requests that asked to see it in its final form. So Mariana, perhaps you could go back to, I think what's going to be slide 6. Minimize reporting burden through leveraging data and information obtained through complementary processes. I mentioned the part about not including Basel and Stockholm by relevant agreements and/or IMC organizations. So what we're looking at here is that piece has now moved and is in 5 bis. So not 5, but 5 bis. Again, I think we're really just trying to get to a point where we can have a comprehensive conversation. So, I mean, it was our intention to put this out in advance so that these moves would be very clear, very transparent, and we did not envision this to be the most difficult part of our conversation. So I think.
Yeah. Carissa, Mahmoud Khwaja is asking for the floor.
Hello, good evening, good morning. I hope I can be heard this time.
Yes.
My comment is with regard to paragraph 5 and 5 bis. I also sent the written comment on the same. And for us, the very important thing is the panel of body of experts. I think their input is more valuable, but in paragraph 5 bis, I do not see the mention of body of experts.
Yes, sir. It's in 5. It's in 5. It's not in 5 bis. It's in 5. We have not deleted any content. So that's
Thank you very much. Sorry for taking the time. Thank you so much.
That's okay. Okay. So I'd like then to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carissa, and Olga Franska is asking for the floor.
Sure. Olga, are you and Alexandra in the same organization?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for compiling the outcome. The submissions from different stakeholders. But to me, the text that we're discussing now looks like a completely new one that we need to comment on. And I'm just wondering if the Secretariat and the facilitators are planning to send out a request for electronic inputs on this new text. That will be very, very helpful to know, as well as the deadline for this. Just a quick example as to 5Bs. You deleted the reference to the agreements, but also you said that to minimize the burden for all stakeholders, data and information, and other things. But not all stakeholders and not all SciComm stakeholders are parties to certain to all like relevant agreements, and thus they may not be like in a position to provide reports based on these agreements. So I mean, I'm not commenting on this. I'm just saying that we need time to reflect on this and provide additional comments to
so we are
text.
So I think what we're trying to do is to get to the point where we can provide those comments. So again, we're trying to get to the content. And so of course we're going to have a discussion about that. And yes, so your point is well taken. Thank you. So the other I guess point that we wanted to point out to you would be subparagraph D of paragraph 12. So as you go to subparagraph D of paragraph 12, you will note that that content has also been moved to paragraph 2. And so with that, I think we won't open the floor on that. I think we'd like to start our discussion to talk about the substantive provisions. As we noted, we have done our best to take your views and your submissions and put them into a format that would allow us to have a discussion about what you would like to see in the reporting. So I'd like to go back to paragraph 1 and start our substantive discussion. Nalini, I believe, or Mariana, I believe that paragraph 1 will show up on slide 9. Thank you so much. And so with paragraph 1, I'd like not to, I assume that everyone has had a chance to review the co-facilitator's proposal. I'd like not to review our italic text. I hope that you have all read that. What paragraph 1 was intended to do, as it was done in the compilation text, is to lay out the goal. What we have done is emphasize the points that you raised, which is important to have all stakeholders to have an opportunity to engage and to provide their reporting. That what we are looking for is information on your implementation efforts that would meet the strategic objectives and their associated targets, and that would take into account, of course, the indicators and the milestones. In doing so, and of course, in doing so would refer to providing your information with respect to your progress on the instrument. You would be able to, as stakeholders, identify the successful outcomes, drive opportunities for improvement, share information, and assess the need for enhanced implementation efforts, and of course, if necessary, prioritize stakeholder engagements activities as a result of your reporting and the assessment eventually by the International Conference on the Reporting. So just to note what was important, there was a lot of emphasis on the fact that all stakeholders needed to be encouraged or invited to participate, that was a universal comment that we received, and that the goal here is to provide information on your implementation efforts such that an assessment can be made. So with that, I think I'd like to stop talking and open the floor. Nalini, if you could please, for
Сережа, не куйся, ты встала?
For your views on paragraph 1. And of course, what we would be doing is taking notes of your views and looking for a way to make progress that we can report out in our summary and move forward to IP4 as a proposal or as a recommendation from our virtual working group.
So we have Jacqueline Alvarez from UNEP, followed by Jill Hanna from GAP. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the work being done and for trying to streamline the different parts. We really appreciate the efforts made. For this paragraph in general, we support how it's written. The only thing that we would like to bring to the attention is that as it is written, it doesn't imply any methodology or any format in doing this. And in a way that might not be part of the instrument as such and might need to be a decision or resolution of the ICCM. But it looks like UNEP as a stakeholder can send anything in the way they want. So it might not be bad to add some kind of format to be developed or some ways of doing things that can afterwards be statistically assessed. And in a way, the progress can really be understood. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can just, Jacqueline, that is a very important comment. And if I could just draw your attention to paragraph 2, you will see that we talked about having that organized, transparent, and uniform report. And so I think that that's a good place for us to come back to the point that you just made. That the stakeholders could provide that in a way that the Secretariat could do exactly that. So thank you. I do think that's a very important point. Thank you.
Okay, Jill Hanna next.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope there's just one of me this time.
There's only one, Jill, so that was easy.
Yeah, but that's much easier to talk like that. I just want to be absolutely sure that what's happened here is the original text in 4.2 has completely disappeared and a completely new text is now on the table.
So So as you note in the, as we opened and you'll look at footnote 1 of the compilation text, I think it's footnote 1, that this was not really given to us as text. So what was given to us was the output of OVWG 3 and IP3, not in text format, and the Bureau put it in as section G so that we would have something to discuss. So to be, I think that in some places it was closer to text, and in some places it was closer to sort of a list of things to think about. So yes, so this is our effort to take what was considered by many in their submissions to not be operative text and to put it into some sort of format that would allow for the stakeholders to understand what they were supposed to do and to identify the goal of what the reporting would come to. So yes, that is correct. if you note in the schedule, we had talked about providing, based on our open discussion and based on submissions, that the co-facilitators would be providing a draft text for consideration. So yes, that is what we're doing. Correct.
Okay, Carissa, Caroline is asking for the floor next from WHO. Caroline, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. So in moving paragraph 12D to the new paragraph 2, there was one part of that concept that was lost, and that is that the reporting by the information from all relevant sectors is included in the reporting process. So that's not just the compiling of the report by the Secretariat, but also the inputs from the stakeholders. So we would suggest including, I think it's in the 5th line of the slide that we have on the screen, taking into account the indicators and milestones and the contributions of all relevant sectors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carissa, so Jill Hannah has said that she wanted to make a point and then a comment. So can I give her the floor again?
Of course.
Yeah, it is really difficult if you go straight into the next person because one doesn't want to say something stupid, and therefore sometimes one needs an answer before one can make the point, really. So yeah, not at all. What I learned is that we shouldn't be looking at the official text, as it were. We should be looking at the earlier compilation. Which is not, so actually we're working with 3 pieces of paper because some of us have scribbles all over IP42 that we were doing ready for a meeting in Romania that never happened and may not have transferred to anything else, which is not making this process much easier, I may mention. And, so as I agree with my colleague Lilian, who is Lilian Cora, who is working from Argentina. We are not finding this very easy, but we will do our best. What I miss, I think, in the version that you have, which is certainly a text that is much more readable than the original one. I don't see any reference to scaling up for better enhanced implementation. And I think that idea that by making stakeholder contributions in the form of reports, we will interest more people in what is going on and show that there's real ownership of this process by SciCam stakeholders, we will make ourselves more attractive to donors, quite frankly. So that is a concept GAP would not like to lose. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill. You don't see scaling up in, maybe it would be helpful if you could give us just a 30-second, what do you see the definition of scaling up to mean? I think perhaps Tirpan and I were trying to find language that people could understand, like what scaling up means, but perhaps you could give us your sense of what kind of language you'd be looking for.
Well, you've got some, thank you very much, Carissa, and I certainly don't want to monopolize the floor. You've kept in assess the need for enhanced implementation efforts. Well, we've known from 2006 that we needed to enhance implementation efforts. What we've never been able to do is bring enough donors and national governments and industry in to help us do it. So by scaling up, I mean doing everything on a bigger scale, doing more of it, and making more awareness from the people who are not automatically involved by having a very serious set of reporting that shows what the problems are.
Okay, thank you so much. That's helpful.
Okay, then we have Priscilla. Priscilla, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much, the Secretariat and Madam Co-Facilitators. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, colleagues. This is Priscila Alves from Brazil's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. First of all, I would like to thank the co-facilitators for the hard work and attempt to find common ground on those complex issues. Regarding paragraph 1, I would like to make a brief comment on the language. As we are still negotiating the format for the future of SAICM, we think it would be more appropriate to use the term framework or arrangement instead of instrument, so that we can use a type of broader concept to make reference to a future format of SAICM. Just to point it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil.
Okay, and then Carissa, we have a number of comments in the comment box. I don't know if you want to just read through it or...
Sure. So I think we have someone asking about whether we can put in subheadings. Certainly, I think that we have the ability to propose subheadings if we think that's helpful. And then we have a question about indicators and milestones that Tirupon has now answered. And then
there's a comment from Suki, but we haven't seen it. So Suki, maybe if you can just put it in the chat to everyone. So thank you, Melissa, for forwarding that, but we don't actually see the suggestion.
Sure. If there's, why don't we keep going and we can come back if Suki wants can chat that while we're if it's relevant, we'd be happy to see that.
Okay. And we've got another, say, 10 more minutes for this section.
Okay, thank you. Looks like Felix, perhaps?
Yep, Felix.
Switzerland.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you to the coaches and the Secretariat for providing this the compilation, this new text. I think you have done quite a lot of work, quite impressive. So my name is Felix Wertli. I'm from the Federal Office for Environment, Switzerland. I think in general, it looks to me like a good attempt that you outline this first paragraph to lay out the goal and so on, what we want to achieve by this taking stock of progress. I also took note that the text is phrased in a positive way, when it's focusing on progress and achievements. I think that assessing progress should also include shortcomings or gaps. It is also helpful to gain a full picture. And I think also it is not lowering the ambition, but when you say what you don't have achieved, perhaps also what you have tried, even a failure, can also be a part of a learning process. So I would suggest that we include also in the text at least the term shortcoming and gaps. And then I look at the text again on the line 6 on the PowerPoint that could be included there. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then actually now we get the original message from Suki. So before sending out the request for additional comments, I suggest the Secretariat send out the paper that shows which sentence in which paragraph was moved to which paragraph, where for those who haven't caught up with the discussion right now. Okay, so maybe if we had done a comparison table type thing.
Well, I mean, I think actually if you look at the italics that is in the co-facilitator's proposal, that will help. But yes, certainly, I think when we put out our summary, I think we can find a way to capture that. We certainly will.
Okay, I think there's no one else asking for the floor or in the chat. Move on, Marissa.
Thank you. Yes, I think actually that was very helpful. I think there were some good suggestions for paragraph 1. Thank you so much to everyone. So with that, we'd like to turn to paragraphs 2 and perhaps take paragraphs 2 and 3 together. So 2, I think perhaps Vasilius's opening point, a number of our comments and suggestions in the open discussion that we all had on this section, as well as some of the supplemental submissions addressed whether we needed paragraphs 2 and 3 because they refer to actions, or as originally posed in the compilation text. they relate to activities of the Secretariat and the International Conference. So one option for your consideration is whether paragraphs 2 and 3 are needed at all. The second consideration is that a number of you actually provided suggestions and comments and edits to paragraphs 2 and 3, and suggested that much of the content that was in here was actually important in that it helped the reader and the stakeholders understand what was expected in terms of the reporting. So Chirapan and I tried to take the content of what was in paragraphs 2 and 3, and instead of having them be direction to the Secretariat, which would normally appear in section A or C, I forget which is which, and direction to the International Conference, which would then appear in a different section, we tried to frame it such that what the stakeholders should do with respect to reporting. So paragraph 2 has all stakeholders, again, near universal comments that it's important that this section be related to all stakeholders, should provide their information related to their implementation efforts to the Secretariat for its compilation. And then we've put analysis in square brackets so that we could have a little bit of a discussion about that. There were varying views on what the role of the Secretariat should be in terms of analysis. So that's why you see the square bracket there. And report development / dissemination in an organized, transparent, and uniform manner. So again, all stakeholders should provide information related to their implementation efforts to the Secretariat in an organized and transparent and uniform manner in accordance with the agreed strategic objectives and targets, taking into account the indicators and milestones to ensure that information from all relevant sectors and stakeholders can be included and assessed. Such information may also include reporting on voluntary targets or milestones, as well as pledges or similar activities from civil society organizations, industry, and other stakeholders. So as we noted earlier, that second sentence, that is from later in the text. We have moved that into paragraph 2 to capture that idea. So I'd like to open discussion on paragraph 2. I think it would be best if we took it sentence by sentence. But if you would like to make one intervention and cover both sentences, I'm sure we can handle that. So why don't we go ahead and open up all of paragraph 2, please.
Okay, so we have Sarah Coons from Canada. Sarah, you have the floor.
Hi, yes. This is a rather long paragraph, but in the first sentence, I think technically we would be providing information to the international conference, and certainly, yes, the Secretariat would have a role in compiling it, but I think we would like that changed to the international conference. Sorry, are we just talking about the first?
No, go ahead. You have the floor. Thank you.
The second section about sort of reporting, development, dissemination, organized, transparent, uniform, it seems sort of unnecessarily prescriptive. If it's intended to clarify what info is to be provided, then perhaps use more general language, and just how about all stakeholders should provide to the international conference information related to their implementation on progress in achieving the vision, strategic objectives, and targets. Just to simplify. So that's just a suggestion on the second part. And I think we're okay with the rest. Thank you.
Thank you. I would note before you move on, perhaps, that we did have a footnote with requests to where this information should be provided. So I would note for folks that are listening, if you look at footnote, just check in footnote 1. I think that is in the IP text that came out of VWG 3. That task was assigned, that receiving the reports from stakeholders was assigned to the international conference. I think we thought that it should go to the Secretariat. So it sounds like, I'm just noting for folks that are out there, that Canada has proposed that that would now go to the international conference as it was. And so thank you for that. That would resolve one of our footnotes as well. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Mahmood Khwaja, and next followed by Gab.
Thank you very much. I did it in my written comments, but I wish to say again that we are very appreciative of the very hard work done by the co-facilitators for revision of this text. On paragraph 2, we feel that coming from so many stakeholders and so much different kind of information which will be provided, I think a formal format developed at the national level or by the Secretariat would be very, very helpful to review as well as to compile all the different comments and suggestions which come from the different stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So we have Jill Hannah next, and then followed by Caroline Vickers. I don't know if Sarah, you want to take the floor again, but then we have Vasilius, Andrew Clark from USA, followed by Olga. So Jill, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And like others, I'm extremely sorry. I should have said at the beginning that we were grateful to have this in advance, even if it seems that some of us haven't used our time as well as we should. And I plead guilty to that. I will address both paragraphs 2 and 3, but I have to say, because we've been pretty busy trying to answer other elements to SciCam, I'm not sure we've captured everything yet. So of course we will have further opportunities to come back. I would beg to differ with my distinguished colleague from Canada. I do think that these reports should go to the Secretariat. They normally do. If you address reports to the conference, then by definition, they should go to the chair, the president of the conference, who I sure will not be very pleased to receive them. And so I think that that's the normal language that you would get in any of the MEAs or most other places when you're asked to report. You would get it on the SDGs, for example, because it's the Secretariat that compiles, analyzes, if that's what you want to do. I don't understand what development dissemination is doing in the second line. I can understand report in an organized, transparent and uniform manner, but I just get confused by those two words. Maybe there's an explanation for them. I wonder if we shouldn't be saying somewhere in here that we will want the conference itself to talk about the reporting requirements, because as the distinguished speaker before me said, it will be very difficult for different kinds of stakeholder to necessarily have uniform reports, and that's true, but unless there's a format, it will be impossible to compile something and get something that can be meaningfully analysed by somebody. And we need an analysis if this is going to be a useful exercise. I don't understand why we pick out at the end pledges or similar activities from civil society organisations, industry and other stakeholders. I also want to know about pledges from governments. So I need that. I think that bit needs clarifying slightly. Do you want me to talk to paragraph 3? Since we've only got one on the screen, it's perhaps easier to do one at a time.
Yes, please, one at a time. Thank you. Thank you. So I think maybe just to touch base, so there were different views on the Secretariat, sort of the report and how it would be developed. And so I think we were just trying to capture, I think, what we saw in the comments, and in the original text, it spoke to the dissemination of the report, but it didn't necessarily speak to the development of the report. I think from our perspective as co-facilitators, that of course the Secretariat normally would have responsibility for developing the report and for disseminating the report, and if everyone agrees with that, then that would be easy to have two separate things there. But I didn't necessarily have that guidance from everyone with respect to the comments, so that's why that's there. To me, it seems obvious, but I didn't want to make any assumptions. And then I think to go to your second point, Jill, on the pledges of similar activities, that is language that we took exactly from one of the other paragraphs that we had opened with in terms of moving into this paragraph. So we will certainly take note about pledges. We'll figure out a way. Thank you. I think to add in the government piece of that.
So Carissa, we have then Caroline, EU, Basilios, Andrew Clark from US, and then followed by Olga. So Caroline, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. This is Caroline Vickers from WHO. We understand this paragraph is talking about how the Secretariat compiles its report and what's included in it. But we think that the first part, which describes what will be in it and ends taking into account the indicators and milestones, doesn't actually ensure everything that follows. It says to ensure that information from all relevant sectors is included, and we don't see anything in the first part about sectoral input. So maybe safest if this first part is kept as it is, to add to mirror the first paragraph and the contributions of all relevant sectors. So that's one option. And another option that the co-facilitators might want to think about as well is whether it's to ensure or and ensure. So there's some possibilities there, but the objective of our intervention is to make sure that the sectoral input is included. Thank you.
Basilios?
Yes, thank you, Nalin. I have two comments on this para 2. The first one is referring to what was suggested by Gab, Jill. I would like to echo the issue on the formats for reporting, on agreed formats, which is captured currently in what you have framed as big ideas on page 9, the second bullet point from the bottom of this page. I think it goes in this direction, and I just want to flag here that this is indeed an important point. The second comment refers to the language around targets in this para. They are mentioned in 2 sentences. In the first one, targets are in the context of agreed strategic objectives and targets. And the second sentence addresses targets as voluntary targets that may also be included in the reporting. So we're not very clear on the semantics here. It would be good if we have some clarification what these additional or voluntary targets may be in comparison to the agreed targets. Thank you.
Okay, then next on my list is Andrew. Andrew, you have the floor.
Thank you, Nalini. And since this is my first time intervening today, I'd just say thank you to you and the Secretariat and to our co-facilitators for putting this all together. this is a very challenging group due to the very extensive mandate that was given to it. So I know this makes for a lot of work for all of us to go through sometimes at a pretty rapid pace to try to get through the work that we have been assigned. So I definitely appreciate all that's gone into this. Looking at paragraph 2, a quick note first is I agree with what Gap said earlier in reference to the Secretariat receiving the reports. I think that is standard, and I think that would be the way we would want to frame it. If reports were delivered to the conference, I think that also might imply that nothing could be done with the reports until the conference met to decide what to do with them. So that would be potentially a problematic aspect of that. And looking at the text, focusing on the first sentence, we're a little bit uncomfortable with the bracketed word analysis here. So we would like to have that, we would suggest deleting that word. And we also have some questions about the term uniform manner in the reporting. I think that, if I'm understanding correctly, that is getting toward this idea of having something maybe a little bit more standardized, but I think maybe that would be best addressed by a reference to something like a template that would be created by the Secretariat that stakeholders would be encouraged to use rather than this term, which is a little bit less clear. And I think this term could also be maybe not less than ideal because as later on in the text we reference reporting under MEAs, which could be parts of reporting under this mechanism, which does make sense. But as others have noted, some countries are not parties to some in MEA, so you would have maybe a patchwork of MEA reporting. So I don't think we should say that has to be if some countries are not providing reports that they didn't submit because they're non-party to something, that should be out of line with what we're asked to do here. And then the other concern with this first sentence is at the very end of it with the word assessed. It's a little bit unclear on what the intent of that word is. It's not clear who would be responsible for assessing all of this information. And the word could also imply that countries or stakeholders would be assessed based on the reporting information. And we don't think that would be I don't think that's the intent here. And I don't think that we would be in favor of that. So thank you. That's all I have on the first sentence.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And then Olga is last on my list, and there's a few comments as well.
Yes, thank you very much. So my question is, so people now are making concrete suggestions to the text and even like concrete wording to the text or deleting the existing wording. So because we cannot see the changes on the screen, it is really hard to follow and hard to reflect quickly on this. So my question is, when the secretary, the facilitators will prepare the revised version of the text, will this version include the submissions that are made, the suggestions that are made today, or will it be the text that we see now so that we could provide comments to the text as it is now, for example, on the screen? And so this is a procedural matter, but another question is, for example, in this paragraph 2, there is the word uniform manner. I believe that it refers to like a template or a set of questions or something that probably the Secretariat will develop. But I believe that such a template should be developed like together. It should be there should be an opportunity for stakeholders to provide input for such a template for reporting. But it's just like this is a suggestion, but we will definitely provide input, written submission to all this. But we need to understand to what text we will provide submissions to the existing one or to the one that will reflect comments made today by someone. Thank you.
Carissa, in the meantime, we also have Priscilla, Anastasia, and Jill Hannah would like to take the floor.
Okay, So we do want to make sure that we have time to get to section H. So why don't we go through the rest of the interventions, and then we had a question about the voluntary targets, and I wanted those that came up in the submissions and is also in the existing text. And so I also noted, I believe, Felix, unless I am misremembering, that perhaps also in Switzerland's supplemental submission, you had perhaps mentioned voluntary targets. I hope I'm not misremembering. So maybe let's go through the rest of your list of speakers, Nalini, and Felix. In the end, I'd like to come back to you to perhaps address the voluntary targets question. And I hope I'm not misremembering that it was you. Thank you.
Okay, Priscilla, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, thank you. Well, in general, we are fine with the proposal. We only have 2 comments about language. The first one is regarding the idea of including the terms analysis and assessed in paragraph 2. And we would prefer to remove this reference for the reasons we have presented in our written submissions, which have been posted on the SciComm website. And I think you, co-facilitators, suggested the inclusion of another part, which is about including if relevant actions taken as a result of any national action plan, as well as pertinent information from relevant international organizations, such as UN agencies and other stakeholders in brackets. About the suggestion of, for including or other stakeholders at the end of the first sentence, we think this concept is too broad and a little bit confusing. So we would also prefer to remove this reference in the sentence. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and then next on my list is Anastasia.
Hi, Nalini and the co-facilitators. Thank you all so much for all your work on this. I think we're pretty happy with this paragraph. I just wanted to support some of the comments made by the US on some format changes. I also want to echo some of the comments that have been made on coming up with some sort of reporting template or a guidance for submitting reports. I think that's one of the issues, that was a struggle for industry in the current SciComm and reporting, and getting some guidance on what sort of reporting format would be best to really have a comprehensive report would be really helpful from our perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we have Jill, I think, last one on our list.
And then we should turn quickly to our chat questions. So Jill, you have the floor.
Well, thank you for giving it to me again. It's very indulgent of you. And you can take out quite a lot of the chat by having given me the floor. There is a problem in this first sentence, and I'm grateful to both Carissa and to the United States for showing me a different way of reading it, and which shows that it's ambiguous. As far as I understand it, this sentence is about stakeholders providing information in an organized, transparent, and uniform manner, in accordance with the agreed strategic objectives and targets, blah, blah, blah. And they are to provide it to the Secretariat or to the Conference of the Parties. That's yet to be resolved. But what goes wrong is by putting in the question of related to the to the Secretariat for its completion and report development dissemination, is that changes the subject. And then it's not clear afterwards who's doing the organizing, transparent, uniform, etc.
Yes,
so you need two sentences. One that says what the stakeholder is going to supply, which actually also involves paragraph 3. And does, I think, be the logical place for where you talk about formats, and thanks to Vasilios for his agreement on that. And then another one that says what the Secretariat will do about it. And what we do about the last sentence here, that would also be, whatever it means, needs to be in what we report on. Now, I have to say, and this will be the end, I am very disappointed by those who are so scared of the words analysis and assessment, because there is no point in reporting if there isn't some kind of analysis and assessment which can be given to the ICCM for it, or whatever it's called, for it to do something with. If we just have, say, 200 country reports and 1,000 other stakeholder reports, there is no point in doing them. We need to have some analysis and assessment. This is a voluntary process. Nobody has to do it if they don't like what they'd have to report. And I don't understand why it's so difficult, given in the SDG process, countries are now coming forward and actually fighting with each other as to who gets to do the voluntary national reports this year. So I hope we will retain those words. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, actually, I think probably. I have just told you. Yes, I think the report was not intended to be a verb, and I think that is also part of the problem. So thank you, Jill. Appreciate your comments. And
I've unmuted Felix because he's ready to respond to your question, Carissa.
Excellent. Felix, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think this is not coming from Switzerland, this idea. I think there's a submission to this specific point, so sorry for that. But I think you really asked a good question, and when I read it, for me, what could make sense, now if you have the thinking, we will agree on a set of targets and of objectives. Now it might be there's a group of countries or a country or stakeholders or sector would do additional kind of targets or even that go beyond. Perhaps this could be meant. So perhaps you could talk about voluntary commitments or something like this, because I think we should not discourage somebody to go even beyond of what we can agree or to add something. But then it might be a bit confusing if you use the same word as we use it like for the whole process. Perhaps voluntary commitment could be an idea. And if I have the floor already, I will take benefit of that. And also add a comment, discussion, assessment, and analysis. I would agree with Jill Hanna that we need somehow to compile kind of reports from stakeholders to assess what is the information we have all together. What does it mean? If not, I think it's also just been an overwhelming amount of paper, and it's also hard to go through. One question is not clear for me from the whole concept is the relation to the periodic review, what we'll discuss later, I would assume. So could the periodic review fulfill this kind of function to assess the reports that are coming from stakeholders, or is that something separated? Perhaps that could be also one thing to clarify a bit our common understanding, how those are related, and if they could take up this role. Thank you very much.
And we have one more hand up from Jacqueline Alvarez. Jacqueline, you have the floor.
Yes, sorry, I was not very sure if you were giving me the floor. No, one comment that we have is that...
Jacqueline, I'm sorry, perhaps others are not struggling, but I can't hear you.
Now can you hear me better?
No, it's very faint, Jacqueline.
I would write it in the chat, but if first can hear me, so the analysis part, because though an analysis is needed, we also understand that it needs to come with an overall assessment. So this needs to contribute to the progress that the instrument is having. And in a way, only through the report might not be enough. So we need to have here some kind of link with the progress in general of the achievement of the vision or the objectives of the instrument. But I will write it down.
Yeah, I think it would be better, Jacqueline, if you don't mind. Okay, so Norway supports the need for some analysis assessment of reports submitted. Carissa, I think that's it for this session.
Okay, for this paragraph? Okay, so, I think we will wait to see what Jacqueline, whether she has additional particular suggestions that we should take note of. And then Nalini, I see that you have asked folks if they would like to extend to continue our discussion. So I see a number of stakeholders, both privately and to everyone, saying that they would like to do that. So I think we will perhaps try to do that. And I guess maybe sort of just speaking to next steps, we'll come back to that at the end of our meeting and talk about how we're going to further our progress in this group. So,
okay. Carissa, sorry, we have one raised hand from Angela Rivera.
Oh, certainly, from Colombia. Certainly, you have the floor, Angela.
Thank you very much, Carissa. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you. I'm using a mask, so I'm not sure if you can hear me well. So I just want to make a short intervention in terms of the comments made by Switzerland and other delegations. Well, from our side, we believe that it's important to take a stock in terms of the progress regarding on the implementation of the SICOM or the new framework. So we fully support the idea to report in some way information in terms of the implementation, but we believe that it's important to create synergies with the information that is reported in other treaties. In any case, in some cases, we have to report the same information, and we do not want to create additional burdens in the countries. So just to say that we fully support, and we believe that it's important to have a report on in terms of the implementation of action, to take a stock in terms of the progress and analyze the information that was provided by parties. So just to highlight that in terms of general comments, I don't have a specific proposal for the text, but I just want to highlight this from our side.
Thank you so much. And I hope you've also had a chance to look at 5 bis, because I did notice that in a number of submissions about this concern with, or not concern, but sort of making sure that there is the opportunity to bring in information that has been reported in other places and to try to manage that reporting burden. So we did try to put all of that together in 5 bis, and I hope we can have a good conversation about that when we get there. Thank you. Okay. All right. I want to make sure that we do get to section H. So I think with that, I would like to close section G and turn to Terrapon, and we will open section H. And I will turn the microphone over to Terrapon, and we will come back at the end of our meeting. And actually, Nalini, do you want to introduce section H, or do we want to turn straight to Terrapon? Do you have some agenda and housekeeping issues to address?
No, just the same. If colleagues could just put your comments in everyone, because it's a little bit hard for us to track. There's a lot of comments taking place in the attendees, and it's being then shared with us so that we can read it and to get it. So we really urge colleagues to include your comments to everyone. It'll help us and everyone then understand the issues raised. Thank you. Over to you, Terrapon.
Thank you, Nalini and Carissa. Before diving down on section H, let's make a deal first. I would like to walk you to our proposal on section H first, and then I will open the floor for discussion on the new proposed alternative paragraph that we have. Please turn to the page 1 of our proposal on H. As you see, whole section of H, mechanism for updating the framework is foreign in brackets. And based on the open discussion on November 5th, and we received 7 submissions via electronic input, most stakeholders agree to establish a mechanism for updating the Beyond 2020 instrument. A number of those stakeholders also have concern that the process could not be too onerous and inflexible to meet the needs of the instrument. Another stakeholder proposed to delete the second sentence of paragraph 1 because it seemed unnecessary. Several stakeholders also expressed the need to ensure that the time frame for updating be reasonable. For example, one proposed at the end of the SDG at 2030, or another one proposed every 10 years, and another one proposed every 5 years. That may not be long enough, in my opinion. Carissa and I would therefore suggest removing the opening and closing bracket of this section, given that there is general agreement to include it. We also suggest that this section be kept simple and not duplicate other sections. There was 2 diverging views on the section, both of which suggest the deletion of this paragraph. One stakeholder noted its concern for institutional burden, in particular for the developing countries, and the diversions of limited resources. And the other noted that there is no need for this text, given that because the international conference can initiate a process for updating the instrument at any time. The group may wish to give consideration to those views that I already mentioned. One stakeholder also requested a clarification on what the intended use or scope of this may be, and their understanding is that this could be a backup of side policy interface in relation to new issues of concern. 2 stakeholders proposed the alternative text of the paragraph 1 as appear in our note on page number 2. Now, Marizana, could you please go to slide number 20, please? Taking into account those mentioned views, Carissa and I propose to delete word section and the totality of and the phrase triggered through the adoption of a resolution calling for an updating process. In order to keep it short and clear in its objective. The international conference only takes decision through the adoption of resolutions, so that does not need to be stated. And the international conference can decide what to propose as needing to be updated. We also add a phrase to reflect the link between section G and H taking into account the existing take on where the need for any update might come from in the second sentence of the paragraph 1. We also leave open the question of the time frame, as we know that there appears to be very little support for agreeing the periodic updates every 10 or 5 years. So the paragraph would then read as follows. Patalina, could you please go to the slide number 22? Thank you. Then the paragraph would read, a process for updating the Beyond 2020 frameworks shall be initiated by the international conference. This shall occur when there is a need to keep pace with changes and needs in global chemicals and waste management, taking into account the result of the assessment of the information and data called for from all stakeholders under Section G, and the overall effectiveness of the Beyond 2020 instrument every 10 or 5 years, in bracket. Now, you can turn to the page number 3 on our note on section H. On subparagraph little Roman 1, please kindly note that in the November 5th discussion and in the written submission, a number of stakeholders call for the process of updating the instrument to not be overly prescriptive or cumbersome. Also, the use of obligation text choices, such as much, is best deleted. So Carissa and I propose that this subparagraph be deleted. There was general dissatisfaction with subparagraph little Roman 2, primarily in that it provides authority to the international conference, which, as one stakeholder rightly noted, should be in section A, if it is needed. So Carissa and I propose the deletion of this subparagraph as well. There was also general dissatisfaction with subparagraph little Roman 3, especially use of the term empower, delegated authorities, and the phrase in support of its mandate. In addition, if there are responsibilities that need to be assigned to the international conference, those responsibilities should be included in section A. We therefore propose that this subparagraph be deleted. Should the group disagree, we would note that stakeholders have called for further clarification regarding the intent of this subparagraph, and further discussion would be needed. Maricela, could you please go back to slide number 21, please? Thank you. On this subparagraph little Roman 4, one stakeholder suggests changing the word government to stakeholders. This is a significant difference from the original text and seems worthy of further consideration by the group. Therefore, Carissa and I agree to put government in bracket for purpose of discussion, but will be deleted if the discussion is such that it is clear that all stakeholders are comfortable with the suggestion to allow any stakeholder to propose an update. In order to consistent with the whole paragraph, we propose to change the word amendments to updates. This subparagraph would then read, such updates may also be proposed by any government in bracket, stakeholder, and will require formal adoption by the international conference. One stakeholder suggests a revised text for subparagraph little Roman 4, as shown in our proposal for section head on page 4. In order to be consistent with whole paragraph, we propose to change the word amendments to update and delete the word international conference to avoid word D, and to allow other stakeholders to receive the communication as well. The communication should be made 6 months in advance as called for the rule of procedures. Then the subparagraph would read, the text of any proposed update amendments, update and delete amendments shall be communicated to all stakeholders and focal points by the Secretariat at least 6 months in advance of the international conference. There were no comments on the subparagraph little Roman 6. Therefore, Carissa and I have proposed only minor editorial changes of consistency purpose. Then the subparagraph would read, the budget for the process to update the instrument will be provided for via the operational budget adopted by the international conference. Hence, the key text is shown on slide number 23. Could you please go to slide number 23? Now, I would like to open the floor for everyone to express your views on this new proposed alternative paragraph. The floor is open. Marcelina, could you please go back to the slide number 22, please? No hands.
No hands yet.
No hands, yes.
And no one's asking for the floor in the chat. Aha, we have Alexandra. Alexandra, you are unmuted. Oh.
I have a question for clarification. What is the difference between update and amendment? Because in the old text there was amendment and now it's update. So could you elaborate on that? Thank you.
If I think the update and amendment, I think something is very close together, but the amendment I think is so negative word, but the update is like a positive way to do this, but it's very code meaning.
I think before we can agree on that, that needs to be checked, like legally checked, what it really means, because otherwise we at the moment we don't know yet. So this I think needs some kind of a legal check, because amendment is clear. That is what we use in all the international law language. And updating is not being used normally. So I think it needs clarification what it really means. Thank you.
I think one time, Chairman, if I can just note also, and perhaps just to what Olga just said, that I think in a legally binding context, amendment would be the normal word. But I think this also is designed to convey that it's a different process than a legally binding agreement. And so an amendment does suggest a formal process for amending something, as opposed to, I think, the collaborative process that has historically been used under this kind of instrument. So just as a point of reference. Thanks.
And then we have Jill Hanna, followed by Sarah Coombs from Canada, Andrew Clark from the US, and then Kate Swirly from Switzerland. So Jill, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed. I think that point about updating, not sort of being there partly to show that this is not a legal instrument, is a very important one. And I take note of that, and we in the Global Alliance on Health and Pollution will need to think about it. One point that nobody, that doesn't seem to be anywhere reflected in the text is the need, which we had right at the beginning of SciCam, and which the EU raised in its very first submission to this process after the Brasilia meeting, which is how important it is to bring other international agencies, and not just UNEP and occasionally WHO, into this process. Because that is one of the areas where we perhaps haven't done as well as we needed to, and that was very much shown in the evaluation, that we do not have buy-in from the governing bodies of even WHO, of OECD, of ILO, of many people, of FAO, many organizations that we need to be fully involved if we are truly to get all the stakeholders in all governments really involved. It's all very well that those organizations are represented at the ICCM. That's great, and the Secretariat is to be congratulated on having been able to do that. But what doesn't happen is that then those other organizations take resolutions that have come from ICCM and think about them and do something about them, and most importantly, incorporate some of what is required into their own budgets. So it seems to me that this text, however it's cleaned up, misses a major point by not stressing the need to bring in other organizations into the process of updating and then into the process of implementing the update. So I don't know if this is the correct place for this, but it's certainly text that we think is super important, because otherwise you can have a multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral approach in the ICCM, but it won't actually translate into the real life of all the organizations that it needs to. Since the other point I would want to make concerns paragraph 2, and I've taken the floor so many times already, I'll just make it now. And that is, of course, that we in the Global Alliance believe that it shouldn't be only government stakeholders who can make a proposal. Obviously, the rules of procedure of the ICCM are such that it's governments who make the decisions, but we believe that anybody should be able to make a proposal. And just as stakeholders, other stakeholders, and a wide range of stakeholders are included on the Bureau, we think that all stakeholders should be able to make proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would just to remind you this, the update, the word update came from the IP3 documents, and it's on the heading of the section H. And so that's why Carissa and I try to make its consistency of the whole paragraph. And I think we have to recognize, Jacqueline as well as comments, that legal review of the whole text also needed to be considered, but for consistency. And I think maybe we have to think about is later at a later stage, and some proposal was made in the chat box that would like to put the bracket on the updating, on the word updating. And I think maybe we have to consider it as well. So now, so I will open the floor for further argument.
Okay. Thereupon, there was a message in the all attendees from Lillian Cora, and she says that because she had only scheduled 2 hours to participate in this meeting, so she has to leave, just because they have other conflicting etc. So just that's the point. But we have on our list right now is Sarah Coombs, followed by Andrew Clark, followed by Felix, and then Priscilla. Sarah, you have the floor.
Thank you. So just a couple of points. On the second sentence, this shall occur when there is a need to keep pace. Just given that there could be other drivers for updating, and that shall is particularly strong language within the multilateral environment, we would suggest that perhaps we could soften it to should or could. And I believe Japan had suggested this up in the comments.
I have a problem with connecting.
Oh, can you hear me? Hello?
Not very well. Sorry, maybe because of my internet. I am not sure, but.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so my suggestion is that the second shall be changed to should or could, just with the rationale that given that there could be other drivers for updating the whatever we want to call it. And then my second point is the last part in terms of dates. It may be premature to set dates for H when it is linked to the progress reporting and G, and certainly we have not discussed those dates yet. So perhaps we could suggest a footnote to indicate this linkage between the updating of the framework and then the suite of dates and processes moving forward. And I think that's it. I would just like to respond to a comment that was made earlier about the IOMC organizations, and just to note that, of course, it is very, very important that they be party of this new agreement moving forward, and that many of them, just like the MEAs or any, have to go to their governing bodies. But in fact, many of them have, and you may be aware, for example, that the WHO had put in their resolution to support significant work on the global chemicals, WHO roadmap, health sector roadmap, which of course Canada and the EU and many, many countries supported. So I just want to say that they have developed many resolutions. Have they been successful? And I think that still remains to be seen, but certainly integrating those sectors is very, very important. So I would agree with that. But I would like to recognize that the significant work that many of those groups have done, and the resolutions that have been put forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to mention a bit about the time frame that I and Carissa already discussed, that it should be go along with the reporting time frame and analyzing process in the section G, and this should be linked together between G and H for the time frame of updating and the reporting. So who is next?
So Andrew Clark from the US. Andrew, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thanks to the co-facilitators for working on this text as well. I think generally, I think that this more streamlined approach to the language on the mechanism for updating the framework is an improvement, and I think we appreciate the efforts to get this into more concise text here. looking at paragraph 1, I think kind of picking up on what Canada said and Japan said in the chat, and others had noted before, I think that we would want the language to reflect the non-legally binding nature of the new framework. So we would, as others says, the language on update rather than amendment is fine, but also the shall language we would also want to remove. So wherever that occurs. So those, as appropriate should be changed to should or could. I also think that the second sentence, this shall occur when there is a need to keep pace with changes in needs in global chemicals and waste management. I think that that I think is what our intent might be, but it is a little bit unclear what when it is that we need to change to keep pace, and that terminology is a little bit vague. So we're a little bit uncomfortable keeping that in the text. So to kind of taking into account the removing the shall language and the discomfort with the keep pace language, maybe the opening of this could read something more like the process for updating may be initiated by the ICCM, by the conference, taking into account and then go on with the language on the reporting, taking into account the assessment of information and data called for, and so forth. And then also, I think I would echo what Candace said about the time frame. I think that maybe, I mean, it is in brackets right now, so we can, of course, revisit it, but I think that would need to be further discussion on if we want to put any kind of, excuse me, time frame here and what that time frame might be. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so then we have Felix, Priscilla, Vasilios from EU, and then Samantha Ross from the UK. So Felix, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And I understand the intention, the concept of this para. I'm just wondering if we're not complicating things for ourselves. We fully support the concept that we have to update the framework, to able to be update the framework. If, for example, what has been said, stock taking processes shows indications or like new needs or changes are occur. That's very important. But we would not be comfortable if we have to limit, if we would limit the competency of the ICCM. An example, now if then we will have a new that's going through the process, and then ICM could not just add this one because it would be seen as an updating of the framework, and then we have to wait like I don't know how many years. We would not be comfortable with it. For this, I'm wondering also if you could just take like a more generic sentence, a para, to say, there might be need to update the framework. If there are, what you have said here, changes are coming in, or we have findings from the taking stock and so on, perhaps that would be sufficient. And one word I think is challenging is the word a process for updating. Because at the moment, we don't know even how much time we have between two ICCMs. So depending on how much time it is, if we have starting a process, we have to initiate a mandate by ICCM 5. And then to wait, we don't know how many years till the next ICCM could decide upon this, might be very long. So in my view, I think we should also give ICCM the competence to update the framework. And if then stakeholders can agree to it, then this is fine. If some say, we need more information, then you launch such kind of process, or whatever then the decision will be. So I'm just wondering if this is not, we are not complicating our things, and we could not make a more generic para to say that we have perhaps to update the framework if certain things occur, and then it's in the mandate of ICCM to do it or not to do it, to decide on the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next on my list is Priscilla. Priscilla, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, thank you. Just to make brief comments due to time constraint, we would like to present again the suggestion for including framework or arrangement instead of instrument. And regarding the periodicity, we would be fine with the proposal of having an overall effectiveness every 10 years. And we would also support the proposal to change the verb shall for a softer term, following the opinions of other colleagues on this issue. Thank you very much.
Vasilis, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Nalina. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Go
me.
ahead.
Thank you very much. It's strange, but I cannot always unmute myself. There's some interference with the slides. Somehow I have to solve this. But anyway, in our submission, we had indeed suggested deleting section H. We now understand that the proposal laid out here by the co-facilitators consists in these two paras. It seems more streamlined and shortened and more, if I say so, clear. So we are flexible to discuss on this basis further. We think that one of the points that perhaps are missing here is an alignment of this process with the 2030 agenda and the SDGs. We had some other interesting ideas in the discussion, for instance, on engagement of sectors and IGOs. So I don't have a final, or we don't have a final view on this, but I think it would be worthwhile to further explore the drafting. Regarding para 1, it may be helpful indeed to remove the timeline, the brackets to defer this discussion to section G. Probably it would be good not to have this discussion at this stage here under H. And regarding para 2, if you allow me, because it is one of the questions you have raised, but I don't know if I may very briefly go into it. You have raised the question of governmental stakeholders. We are flexible and we could be fine with removing the reference or the explicit or the sole reference to government and give it a more general, more inclusive formulation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next on my list is Samantha Ross. Samantha, you have the floor.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone again. This is just a general comment from the UK on Little Roman 4 paragraph and the wording change from government to stakeholders. We would like to agree with the point made by Jill Hanna from GAP earlier and the EU just now around the use of the word stakeholders here, as the Beyond 2020 framework is a framework for a wide range of stakeholders. We think it is important to be inclusive in this way, and we would see governments and all others involved as being captured under that broader term stakeholder as well. Also, as our colleagues in Japan and Canada have raised, we also recognise the importance of wider engagement and involvement from IOMC organisations and others. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then we have Andrea Rother, followed by Mahmoud Khwaja. Andrea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Nalini, and thank you again to the co-facilitators for the work that they've done. Very much appreciated. And hello to everyone on the call. I have a question of clarification, and my apologies if this has been addressed. I've had to do the multitasking due to the time. Have we discussed the issue about the rules of procedure that were adopted by ICCM2, are they going to fall under this group? And how does this paragraph work in relationship to the rules of procedure? Will they be working together? Will the rules of procedures not exist anymore? So just a question of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I and Carissa have been discussed on this point. I think if any session that impact on the work and mandates of the international conference under section, also under section 5, institutional arrangement and its rule of procedure, I think those should be updated accordingly. I think this is our discussion before we have this meeting. And I think because if any in the new instrument impact the rule of procedure, I think the rule of procedure is supposed to be updated.
Thank you. Can I just ask which group is updating the rules of procedure? Because my understanding was that that was on the table as well, as whether that was going to continue in the new framework and whether it would be updated or not.
So I don't think, and Nalini, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe that the rules of procedure have been assigned to any particular virtual working group at this time. I do not believe that it certainly does not fall into our mandate in this group. I think if I understand the directions correctly from the president and the co-chairs, to the extent that we think that there may be overlap or issues that need to be flagged, that we would drop a footnote in our proposals or in our summaries going forward to IP4, and that would be sort of captured there, so that there is an opportunity to come back and look and see whether there are proposals that need to be made or sort of linkages that need to be made. But it is not in the mandate of any of our groups so far, as I understand it.
Yes.
Okay, my concern is this paragraph, that whether it conflicts with the rules of procedure or whether it works hand in hand, let's put it that way. So perhaps just flagging that.
Yes, well, I think the footnote, we can expand upon the footnote, but I think that is exactly what it's intended to be done, is to sort of, they should go hand in hand, of course, right? So, we'll flag that and duly noted that there's a relationship.
Okay, so then I can go to Mahmood Khwaja. Mahmood, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity for the third time. And thank you, the co-facilitator, for the opening comments. In view of the extended time of this session, I would be very focused and direct on my intervention. And this is also mentioned in my written comments. We only had one comment on this section H, and that is with regard to the word need in the third line of this paragraph. We really wonder that, say, after 5 years or 10 years, I mean, the need is very obvious. I mean, and so really, do we need to mention the word need here? The other related concern is that since it would be at the international conference, and as a distinguished delegate earlier said, that we have multi-stakeholders and multi-sectors delegates there, I think to agree or for a consensus with regard to the need would be very, very difficult and complicated in view of the diversified situation in developing countries as well as countries with economy in transition. So we are emphasizing, really, do we need to mention the word need here? To us, the need is very obvious. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then, Terapon, there's a comment from UNECE. Do you want me to read it, or you could just have a quick look? It's just talking about their experience and how during the review, the reporting requirements under the protocol, which is the decision-making body, shall consider the following issues for further development. So it postpones the discussion on update review to a later stage. A timeline considering potential review update can be helpful to include if such a solution is considered. So.
All right. Thank you.
And
Any
then
further?
we have, yeah, I don't know, we have Sarah and Felix still with their hands up. I don't know if that's from before or Sarah, would you like to take the floor? Okay, that's done. And Felix? No. Good. So it's all clear.
No, no more requests for the floor.
That's correct.
So if not, I think I have to close the discussion on this section, and I'd like to turn next that we would like to discuss that because from the chat box I saw that some request for more additional round of electronic inputs on our proposal. So Carissa, would you like to anticipate on this comment?
Sure. In fact, why don't we go ahead and turn to the next part of our agenda, and we'll cover that and that, which is sort of informing on next steps. Nalini, before I do that, is there anything else that you want to add to our discussion on H or any?
No, maybe just to confirm, Carissa, that your reading of the relation with the rules of procedure, because it's not been given to in any mandate of any of the virtual working groups that are going on. So it is something for discussion at IP4, including the first parts of the text in the compilation text. So, the mandate is also to say if there are gaps or if there's, and so these are places where we could raise it. Carissa, last meeting you had a parking lot document.
Yes, of course.
So we include it in the parking lot document. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Mariana, if you have accessible the December 17 section of the calendar, perhaps you could share that at this time. If you could just make that one box for section 17 available, or share that on your screen. And if you can't, that's fine. So in terms of next steps, I think first, Cherapan and I would like to thank those of you that provided your input on section E by November 30. We appreciate that very much. That is the next section that we will be tackling as a virtual working group. It is on the schedule, as you will see, for December 17. The other request for electronic input that went out earlier this week was with respect to section D. And we put out for electronic input, as we agreed in our meeting, the paragraphs that we were not able to address in our conversation. So I believe, Nalini, I'm going to test your memory here, but I believe we asked for comments back on section D by December 11. So I just want to flag that for you. It is in your inbox. We provided very specific instructions on the comments that we were seeking. You will recall that section D was very extensively negotiated at IP3, and so consistent with our approach to paragraphs 1 and 2, which I think were the only two that we got to of section D. We are asking for your specific input on those remaining issues in section D. And of course, if you had other suggestions, we will put them in the parking lot. But if you could please focus your comments, that would be very helpful. So the very first part of our next meeting on December 17 will be related to section E. And we will be looking at the electronic input that we received and the compilation text. And like this meeting, we will, as you can see by the schedule, we are planning on a co-facilitator's proposal. So we would ask that, well, first, I thank you for your kind words about the amount of work that we put into the proposals for today. We will intend to do a very similar process for next time, and we would ask that you would take a hard, long look and please read through those proposals in advance of our meeting so that we can move through as quickly as possible, because as you can see, we are at each meeting running out of time given the interest. So thank you for that in advance. The second part of our meeting on December 17 was supposed to be beginning our review of the efforts that we have made together to make progress on all of the sections that were assigned to us in our mandate. So Chirapan and I will consult about which sections we are going to try to tackle in the beginning of our review, but I think you should assume that we may get through all of them. Obviously, we will have completed section E, or I hope we will have completed section E just in that beginning of that meeting. So you will see that the sections B, C, D, G, and H are listed in the schedule. So we will try to put together some thoughts on how best to get through all of that. We then have a second session that is designed to finalize our review on January 14. So we do not expect to get through everything, nor did we expect to get through everything when we set the schedule. But I think that answers the questions from in the chat box about when we will be coming back to these issues. So I don't know whether we will get to them on December 17 or whether we will get to sections G and H on January 14. We will provide some very specific requests for electronic input with respect to sections G and H. Chirapan and I will get together and in our summary for this meeting consider sort of where we were able to make progress and what issues we'll be requesting further input moving forward. So we'll appreciate your flexibility and waiting to hear from us on how we're going to manage that. And I do think we were able to make some progress today, and we certainly appreciate your substantive comments on sections G and H. And we will look forward to folding those into our discussions either on the 17th of December or on the 14th of January. I suspect, just thinking about our conversation 2 weeks ago on section D and C and B, that it is likely that we will return to G and H in January and not in December. But I would ask you to watch your inbox carefully from your for the requests from the Secretariat and the providing of proposals and suggestions from the Secretariat. I think that with that, I think we're prepared to close. We of course appreciate your willingness to go longer today. We had hoped it would move a little more quickly in the beginning, and perhaps we should have anticipated that we would need more time. But I will note that our discussion on the 17th of December is scheduled for 3 hours already, so hopefully your calendars reflect that. Is there any, Nalini, do we need to touch on any other issues?
No, I think really appreciate the flexibility, and we have the next meeting. It is for 3 hours, so hopefully that will then accommodate people have that in their schedule. So it seems that the 2 hours is never enough, and really appreciate the flexibility of colleagues to stay on.
We do, and I just also sorry, maybe if I could just.
We would also really encourage, we've been doing a lot of work in the background to get all the documents to you and analysis, reviewing all of the supplementary information, the comments that we receive, and taking everything into account. So really urge the colleagues that do read the documents that come out. I know often, it's important so that then you come to these discussions to have some nice informed discussions at least, and so we appreciate all the efforts nevertheless. Thank you.
Yes, and Nalini, I'm sorry. I should have. I apologize for not taking the time to sort of thank you as the Secretariat with Mariana and Jose for all of your time and helping Chirapan and I put forward our proposals and our thoughts, as well as taking into account and running all of the meetings. So thank you for your tremendous efforts. None of the four of us are on the same time zone, so that makes it extremely difficult also, and you have been fantastic from the Secretariat in your efforts. And also, I just would note that we've gotten numerous chats and emails, et cetera, thanking us for our work, and we are very appreciative of that as well. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you all on December 17, and we will provide you with some further direction before that meeting to make sure that we are all prepared. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, Chirapan.